Dark footage from these horrific exorcisms was supposed to stay buried and never be seen nor heard, but I'm sharing their stories. The Anneliese Michel case. Now, this case is one of the most controversial cases in modern history. Anneliese was a German woman born in 1952 who underwent 67 Catholic exorcism rites over a period of 9 months and during the year before her demise. She passed due to malnutrition, for which her parents and priests were convicted of negligent homicide. Now, she was actually diagnosed with epileptic psychosis and had a history of psychiatric treatment that proved ineffective. By the time that she was 20, she had become intolerant of various religious objects and began to hear voices. Her condition worsened despite medication, and she became despondent, also displaying other symptoms for which she took medication as well. Now, after taking psychiatric medications for 5 years that failed to actually improve her symptoms, Michel and her family became convinced she was possessed by a demon. As a result, her family appealed to the Catholic Church for an exorcism. While rejected at first, 2 priests got permission from the local bishop in 1975. Now, the priests began performing exorcisms and the family stopped consulting doctors. They believed she was being possessed by 6 different demons, with one of them actually being Lucifer. Michel stopped eating food as she thought starving herself would rid herself of the demons that had taken over her body, and passed away on July 1st, 1976 from malnutrition and exhaustion resulting from the neglect of her medical condition after the crazy excessive 67 exorcism sessions. Now, she weighed only 68 pounds and was only 23 years old. The entire process was filmed. The footage is chilling. Anneliese sits quietly before letting out a sudden blood-curdling scream and vomiting a thick black substance. Her face appears to morph, her eyes losing their whites entirely. At one point, a mirror in the room shatters on its own, cutting her cheek, and she laughs, smearing the liquid across her face, whispering, "Now I am whole." The audio you can listen to yourself. It's quite scary. You can't make out everything she says. It's really hard to dissect it, but it's worth listening to if it's piqued your interest. Now, the church immediately confiscated the tapes, of course. A local reporter claimed to have seen a copy and described a section where Anneliese speaks in a deceased relative's voice, complete with matching tone and cadence. Now, that journalist disappeared 3 months later. The footage remains locked in a church vault in Madrid with no known copies confirmed to exist, though many claim to have seen snippets in lost VHS tapes passed around in the 90s. The case, of course, sparked controversy and highlighted the need for careful consideration when dealing with cases of apparent demonic possession, particularly when a medical diagnosis exists. The 1973 Tanacu exorcism tapes. Now, in the secluded village of Tanacu, Romania, a 23-year-old woman named Marcia Irina Cornisi arrived at the Tanacu monastery in 2005, actually seeking peace. Now, diagnosed with schizophrenia, she was placed under the care of a small group of nuns and a priest named Daniel Pedro Cornago. So, over time, they actually began to believe that she was possessed. What followed was a brutal exorcism that lasted days. Now, Father Cornaju, he basically thought that it was not just a mental illness, but rather that Cornisi was possessed by Satan. He would later claim that you can't take the devil out of people with pills and that an exorcism was necessary. In order to restrain her from violent movements, including those causing her to hit herself, the nuns bound her hands and feet and locked her in her room as they participated in the exorcism, basically commemorating the ascension of Jesus. Now, a few days later, they chained her to a cross with her arms stretched and carried her into the church so that they could anoint her. Now, according to Sister Nicoletta, Cornisi had been restrained in the same manner that others who were demonically possessed were. Sister Nicoletta stated that, had Cornisi not been restrained, she could have either unalived herself or unalived someone else. Now, with regard to Cornisi, Sister Nicoletta also stated that Irina knew that she was possessed by evil spirits because she was begging us to tie her up and help her. Her wrists and forehead were then anointed with holy oil, and she was kept in the church for 3 days. They put a towel into her mouth to stop her from cursing and prayed to cast out the devil as they wet her lips with holy water. Footage surfaced, never meant to be released, captured by a journalist who infiltrated the monastery. It shows Cornisi strapped to a makeshift crucifix, her mouth gagged, and her body convulsing violently. She screams not in words, but in very animalistic animalistic growls that echo off the monastery walls. Her final hours were spent without food and water, and she ultimately passed of dehydration and exhaustion. Now, Romanian authorities buried the footage, citing national disgrace, but fragments leaked years later on underground forums showing glimpses of her final hours. Shocking and raw, her eyes wild with either illness or something far worse. This case was widely publicized in the Romanian media, and following a lengthy trial, the priest was sentenced on appeal to 7 years, one nun to 6 years and the other 3 nuns to 5 years. However, many of the residents there, including Cornisi's brother, believed her to have suffered from demonic possession. The coroner maintained that the nun's cause of passing was actually due to an overdose of adrenaline given in the ambulance. Louis' exorcism. In the 1940s, a former priest from Missouri attempted to perform a clandestine exorcism in the basement of a private residence in St. Louis. The subject was a teenage boy who reportedly displayed erratic behavior, including writing in Latin despite never studying it, and exhibiting knowledge of private family details he couldn't have known. The St. Louis exorcism, a real-life event that reportedly inspired William Peter Blatty's novel The Exorcist, occurred in 1949 in St. Louis, Missouri, involving the boy Robbie Hunkler, now who allegedly exhibited signs of demonic possession. The event involved multiple exorcisms, including, one at the Alexandrian Brothers Hospital. Robbie Hunkler and his mother actually moved to St. Louis, where they stayed with relatives in Belle Noire. The boy reportedly began exhibiting strange behaviors, including physical manifestations and speaking in a very deep, guttural voice. The family contacted a priest at St. Louis University, who in turn contacted Father William Bowdern, an associate of the university's spiritual center. Bowdern, with permission from the St. Louis Archbishop, performed a series of exorcism rituals. Now, the rituals took place at the boy's residence and basically eventually the brothers' hospital. Now, during the rituals, the boy reportedly exhibited various signs of possession, including the bed shaking, objects flying, and speaking in a strange voice. A camera was set up to record the process for documentation purposes. What it captured was beyond disturbing. At 3:14 a.m. on the second night, the boy broke free from his restraints. The tape, viewed by only a handful of people, reportedly shows his body just twisting in impossible angles and a voice deep and layered, unlike any human vocal range, speaking directly into the lens, saying, "He belongs to me." Shortly after, the basement flooded inexplicably. The priest abandoned the church and was later found in a psychiatric hospital, scribbling symbols on the walls. The footage was classified as sacred and never to be viewed by the public, but stills from the tape were allegedly leaked and passed around the dark web under the file name STLE Exorcism 92. Lastly, we have the case of Clara Germana Cele. Now, she is said to have been possessed when she was a 16-year-old girl at St. Michael's Mission in Natal, South Africa. She was an orphan of African origin and was baptized as an infant. At the age of 16, the girl allegedly made a pact with Satan, and this is said to be the cause of her demonic possession. Clara later revealed this information to her confessor, Father Harness Aremus. Now, in an account written by a nun, Clara was said to be able to speak languages of which she had no previous knowledge. This fact was also witnessed by others, who recorded that she understood Polish, German, French, Norwegian, and all other languages. Now, the nun reported that Clara demonstrated clairvoyance by revealing the most intimate secrets and transgressions of people with whom she had no contact. Moreover, Clara could not bear the presence of blessed objects and seemed imbued with extraordinary strength and ferocity. Now, often hurling nuns even at the, in the convent rooms and kind of just attacking them. Now, the nun reported that the girl's cries had a savage bestiality that astonished those around her. For 6 years, Clara lived in a demonic possession-free life. Now, she felt ashamed for her behavior, asking for forgiveness while seeking humble pursuits. She passed away in 1912 from heart failure at the young age of 22. However, history had lost track of and forgotten Clara in some versions of her story. That's all for today, and thanks for watching. I'm your host, Ashley. Until next time, stay scared.